To comfort you when you are sad, to see the good, forget the bad, turning sorrow into bliss. A mother's kiss.
Welcome to Bringing Jesus to a Broken Heart, and we are doing a show entitled The Decision. I have a great guest here. She's actually one of my colleagues, and she has a great testimony on how she made the decision to choose life. I'm going to keep her name anonymous because she would just like to keep that personal. Her background is that she was a school counselor. She worked in the school systems for many years as a psychologist, and her testimony is really about how she personally made this decision to choose life. Welcome. So my first question is, what inspired you to make the decision to choose life? Because I understand that your background and part of the personal story, which is very heartfelt, is that you were married for 10 years, and then after 10 years of marriage, when you became pregnant, you let your husband know that you were carrying a child, and he did not want to have the child, and he asked you to abort it. So if you could just comment on how you went through that and how you made the decision to choose life.
Well, we were married 10 years, and the turning point in the marriage was my husband was offered a relocation out of state, and we had a conflict about that. I had just finished my counseling degree, and prior to that I had been a history teacher. I'd also been a phys ed teacher. So now I'm just starting my private practice. I'm also working in a school setting. So we had conflict, and I asked him to go to counseling. He had some issues from his past. It was either I go with him or he did not want to have a marriage, and he definitely did not want to have the child. And that had not really been discussed prior because we were just moving along in our careers. He had a very good career in business and I in education. I had to ask him to go to counseling. He refused, and basically it just started a tumultuous situation.
When you were faced with the crossroad of deciding whether you wanted to keep the marriage or to keep the child, how did you make that decision?
Well, that decision took me a while to think about it. I'm a practicing Catholic. I always said the rosary. I always prayed to the Blessed Mother and to Christ. I'm pro-life. I never really had to confront myself with that, but knowing that I am pro-life, I just could not make a negative decision against that. And I said to my husband that it was impossible for me to do that. So he would not go for counseling, and then basically became very tyrannical and wanted to get the house sold, and we went through a lot of tumultuous litigation. I had to get a lawyer to stop him from trying to sell our house, and a lot of acting out. He was just acting on his anger. So I sought my own personal counseling to just help me get through the shock of the whole situation. I couldn't believe that this was happening. It was almost like a bad dream, yet it was a reality, and I sought counseling. I also talked to a lot of my friends, and a lot of people were trying to gear me towards having an abortion, saying, well, you know, this is going to put too much stress on you financially, you can't handle it. Why don't you just consider that and then move on with your life?
After you decided that you're going to keep the child and you were going to choose life, what was the steps in action for you that made that decision possible?
Well, the steps that I took were that basically I had to figure out how am I going to afford this financially. But the most important thing to me was to protect the child. I mean, this was my child, our child, but now I had to think of it as my child. And it was a child of God. So to me, that was the most important thing, is to hold on to life. And I just sought every resource. Financially, I really couldn't handle it myself, but I was building my private practice. And through all of that, I think that just God was with me the whole time, because I became so strong that I was able to counsel people, even going through my own turmoil. And I was thinking, how can I do that? So I think part of it was my background as a healing person. I had always worked with special ed children. I had a degree in physical education. I also worked with autistic children, physically handicapped children. And I was always trying to help young children. So for me to abort my own child was just such a conflict of interest, a devastating thought. I was able to find the resiliency through my own financial resources, but I know in helping so many people that that's not the case, and that's one of the reasons why they do make that decision. But there are so many other alternatives that you can find out there today, especially, that even if you don't have the financial resources or the emotional support, there are people that will help you, and I can get into that at another point. But the most important thing to me was when I encouraged people to do this, to listen to the heartbeat of the child, to see a sonogram, then you really realize that you have a growing life inside of you. And for me, that was my own personal decision to go through having a child on my own and raising my child on my own until many years later when I remarried.
And that it was a very courageous decision because you chose between the marriage, someone you loved,
Yes.
and a child that was on the way, and it was life.
Right.
And it was a child, it was a baby. So I really think that was a courageous step. And I think that what you're saying, there's many women that are out there that may be faced with the decision and do not know that there's resources or do not know that there is available help, but there is. And then we're going to do that in a later show, really talk in depth about the resources that are out there for pregnant women. To hear your testimony today about how you chose life in a very difficult situation and that you were blessed by that decision, when you made that step, you realized that the doors began to open and that all the resources started to flood in because you chose the way of God, which is life. And by no means is this a show that is about condemnation to anyone that may have had an abortion, because there's forgiveness and there's healing, and we also will do a post-trauma of abortion show at a later time. I just want to thank you for coming and sharing this part of your life, and now you have a beautiful daughter that you spend time with, celebrate holidays with, and she's become a successful person due to your decision. So we thank you for coming on, and again, I admire you for your courage and your strength.
Well, thank you. I think of my daughter as a young woman now, successful in business and recently married. It makes me very happy that she was able to have her life. And I think that that's really what I live with, that I think Christ and the Blessed Mother helped me get through all of that and find the right people to help me. I had to hire people. Didn't have family resources, which some people do have, and that's very fortunate. I had to become very resilient, and I think that we all have that capacity. Even when we don't have the financial or the emotional support, we always have the support of Christ and of our faith. And I think that we all have that ability to be disciples of Christ and follow through and following the Word of God. And for me, that's a very personal thing, to be able to allow people to have their lives. And when I think of the high abortion rate today, to me that's very sad, because I think that there are many, many lives that could be saved if we worked on just trying to find the right emotional and financial support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
I pray you'll be our eyes and watch us where we go, and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to the place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe.
La luce che tu dai
I pray we'll find your
nel
light
cuore resterà,
and hold it in our heart.
ricordaci
When
che
stars go out each night,
l'eterna stella sei. la mia preghiera.
Let this be our prayer.
Quanta fede c'è.
When shadows fill our day.
Lead us to a place.
Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll